computer. All right, let's see what the confusion's about. The idea there was I tried to keep the last homework. Okay, so the last homework, the real chapter work, the homework, not the Learn Smart. The last homework, the final exam, and the final paper were all on chapter 10. That way it contained everything. Like people didn't have to learn all these other things in these other chapters and run around. Okay. So that was the idea in setting this thing up. The second part of it is, right, when you go to the chapter, if you read through the chapter and there's a case in there, okay, if you read as they're going along, they're telling you, go get these templates, okay? All right, as you read through this, they explain, this book is very good for this topic. I mean, it actually just steps right through it at a very clear a clear mode. The other course that I teach, it's also in there, and that book isn't as clear as this. This one just steps you through what all these things mean and everything. Okay, so the idea there is if someone hasn't read the chapter or is using it as a reference, they're going to have problems. Okay, so that's what I think is going on here. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, so that's that. What I did, if you go to the end of on this page forward here, I'm going to go to the case that we have. The case comes right at the end of this. Okay, at the end of chapter 6. Sorry, formulas, learning aids, solve problems, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Here, it's right at the end of the chapter is the case. That's where I got it from. Okay, so everybody should probably use this as the prime source. The thing that I did was a very small screen grab that I put together. Okay, so it walks you through the problem here. Okay, and just so it's understood, the way that they formatted this question set, these question sets are not super clear. So they started out with a little a, okay? So the first thing to do is go through and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it tells you what to go do. Okay, then it says in B, now look afterward, we're going to give you some data. Okay, so we're going to give you some data that of actual numbers that actually occurred. So you have to go through 1 through 5 again and look at how your forecasts went. Okay, so in part A, each of the 1 through 5 was a different kind of forecasting. Then when you get to B, you're able to look at how accurate each one of them was. Okay. And then on C, at the end of the hour, okay, so then C gets a little bit involved. It explains how they jammed this central versus distributed together and everything. Okay. And underneath C, there's 4 questions that pop up. Okay. So that's the way that the book is formatted. It's underneath C, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now what I did, I'm just going to go to the last thing that I gave everybody. On E-Class, I had gone through the problems. Had gone through this problem. And if you remember, see this green and yellow? Oh, you know what? I'm not sharing this, am I? I am sorry. Wait a minute. I see other people are online. Good. There's other people on the line, and I forgot that I wasn't sharing this. You don't know what I'm talking about. All right, let me do that again. So speak up if something doesn't sound right. Okay. So here is chapter 10. The idea for anybody that just kind of jumped on here, I'll just repeat what I'm doing. I'm recording this and I'll post it back into the final report tab of eClass, okay, in case you need to go back for any of this information. All right, so the idea was that chapter 10, the last homework, the final exam, and the final paper all had to do with chapter 10. I tried to contain it, like I was trying to make it less just basically narrow the topics down so it was less of a burden to everybody. Okay, so in chapter 10, you need to go through the chapter, because through the chapter they're calling out to go open up this template and that template. I gave all of that to you. Okay, so that's why I tried to make this really easy. And not only that, I took the templates and I numbered them 1 through 10. Okay, and that's what, if you had downloaded the things from eClass, that these are all things to try to make this very containable. Like really from the outset, this shouldn't have, I was really looking at maybe like an 8 to 10 hour work on this. Okay, with questions that, I'm available, people sending me specific questions like, is this right, or I'm not really quite sure about that. Okay, so this chapter goes through the forecasting techniques And there's actually even a cutoff point where you don't have to go beyond that, like into judgment. You don't have to go into the judgment level. We're not doing anything judgment type. Sometimes they call it the Delphi method. You get some experts together. You know what we call it nowadays is you go get some stakeholders and experts and put them together in a room, that kind of thing. All right. So if you go through the problem here, there's actually a case that performs all these things that you would need to do. This is why I set it up the way I did. It's almost like a guide, the chapter itself. Okay. The last couple of things that you're going to need to do is talk about causal forecasting in the case, and see here when we get into judgmental forecasting, we don't even get into that with the case, so you can ignore that, right? Which is only like a page or so, right? So I'm keep forwarding into the problem set here, and here we pop up on case 10 is right at the end of this, okay? So the thing that I had done a screenshot for and put up on eClass is just here. It's just at the end of the chapter, all right? I'm not sure if people realize that or not, okay? So it walks you through, they set up the scenario here, the premise and scenario and all that. And then they have you, they go do this. They say, go do this. So the first, so 10, chapter 10, case 10, or whatever you want to call it, question A, or kind of workload A, is these 5 things. It tells you to go through there and run these forecasts, these 5 forecasts. Then they give you data. Then they said, okay, things happened. Okay, now things happened in B. For each of these 5, you go through and you look at what the error is. Okay, so basically, I'm trying to lay out as much as I can for everybody so you understand where you're heading with this. What this whole case really is using these different forecasting techniques, which one becomes the most accurate? We're going to end up with that question. That's going to really be, it led really well into an executive summary and say, we've analyzed this 5 different ways. We've looked at the actual data that came back in. We compared what our forecasts were to the actual, and based upon those results and based upon what kind of errors are involved with the different forecasting techniques, I recommend this. And that's basically, the core of the executive summary. Okay, so you go through B here to go back into this. So going back into B, you just run these other 5, and I don't mean to say just, but I mean you run these other 5, and the templates are called out for every one of these sections. I provided that on eClass. Okay, so I took every one of these and I wrote in which template to use. I numbered it clearly, like I renamed it, packaged it up. I think I put it into a zip file. So you just needed to download a lot of this. I was trying to take novelty and innovation out of this and try to just lead you. So the point here is, if you're able to like directly execute these things, that's everything about this final paper, this final report. Okay, so you need to be able to execute these things. And at first I gave you a map, so hang on to that thought. All right, so once you get through B talks about what happens in real life, the actual outcomes here. Okay, then when you get to C, now this is more of a little bit along the lines of conclusive. Let's think about what we just saw here, and they go through this. The real struggle would be to figure out what they did with the
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this kind of like the number 15 homework, or nothing like it at all? Because I'm so lost.
Yes,
I don't know if I'm just a little stupid, or I just can't get it. Because
it is.
I don't know where to start. I looked at the stuff, I downloaded everything, I read everything.
Yeah.
And I even contacted friends, and I have no idea what's going on. They don't know what's going on. And I don't even know where to start on this. And I get the concept that what has to be done, but I feel like I didn't practice all this math all over the course of the semester. So I don't know how to tie this all together, just because I don't know what the end results should even look like.
Well, okay, hang on to that, because that's what I'm rolling with everybody here, because I get good feedback. I've gotten good emails back, and and I'll adapt, because I had to keep going into this when I got the questions and make sure there wasn't, I had to make sure I had it straight, and pretty much everything was straight. At first, I'd get a question, and I was quite concerned. Okay, so when you set a course up for the first time, you're really concerned that everything's going to flow well. But then, one by one, as the questions were coming in, I was going, okay. So that's why it's good that for those that are able to join on here, as I said, I'm recording this, and to be fair and equitable to those that didn't have the chance to come on here, so they'll be able to look at it. Okay, so let me finish this out. I'm going to hold on to that, what you just mentioned. Okay, so C gets into some more of the conclusive type thoughts about this, and you'll find that there's 4 questions that are involved. And at the end, it says, which forecasting method would you recommend Mark use and why? Okay, so that's the question C4 that becomes really what your executive summary is. Okay, so that's to explain the chapter. If you walk through the chapter with it, it explains a lot of this is subtracting things and averaging things and seeing what differences there are. Okay, so don't get too phased out by MAD and exponential average. Okay, because the exponential, all right, for anybody that had me for operations, what you're really looking at when you look at the exponential, it's getting at the standard deviation. Okay, what we didn't get into here, unless you do the well, not really the regression, but what this was is like useful, practical use of these numbers, and there's hidden behind that is the core of statistics. Okay, so you look at how far things were from other things, these distances, right? And you look at averaging, like the example in the chapter has you like averaging over a couple of quarters, I think it is. Okay, like the first quarter of every year over a period of years. So you're looking for that seasonality. Okay, all right. That being said, what I thought was going to help a lot, and maybe people didn't realize what I just sent out, but this is revision 2 of the file that I had put up on eClass. On eClass, all right, on eClass, you'll if you downloaded this file, it was a guide list. What I didn't really change the name. It's called the case spreadsheets. There's a thing right in the way here. Let me move this. One of the Zoom things is right in the way. Hang on just a second. Okay. All right. So the name of this file that I just sent out by email is the case spreadsheets needed per question, but Rev 2. Okay. So I sensed the gap there that I felt that if you had read the chapter, you could see that there are these subtractions going on. The MAD is not like that of a terrible topic, except feeling like maybe we didn't have the scaffolding to get there with it, you know? So what I provided here was these are the actual outputs, okay? This is actually the answers. What I put in here were the answers to the questions. This is what, by using this thing up here, template for seasonal factors. So that would have been, so this is case 10, the first question A, and sub 1 underneath that, okay? So I actually just now have given out what you are shooting at. And if you can get your spreadsheet, now remember, these are templates. The idea there is if you get the data in there correctly, then over on the right, this RNG stuff, it's all set up to punch out the numbers here. Okay, so I recognize what was going on. I go, oh, okay, all right, I'll go along with this. The scaffolding wasn't quite there. I thought people were going to be able to read the chapter and whatever, but okay, listen. And it's good enough if you are able to grab the template and arrange the numbers as they say. The only trick that's in this one is that there are some empty dates there because of holidays. Okay. So if you notice, this problem, why it's different than the example in the book, is that this is looking at days of the week over some number of 5 or 6 weeks. Okay, so over on the left in here, a little bit, if you've been struggling with a little bit, I would imagine you're going to have some ahas and go, oh, I get it. Okay, so here's that template that the publisher gives us, okay? And I've got to rearrange it here a little bit. So I go week 44, you know, if you arrange it just like this, you're going to be doing fine. If you can mimic this, you will do fine. So at this point, that's what your challenge is, okay? At this point, you have, now if you pan down in here, so this today, what I did is I gone through and I grabbed screenshots of what you need to do. Bang, bang, I'm putting them in there, all right? So here's 2. So A.2, the second part, this is a template. If you arrange, you have to like work a little bit on the left here and get the days correct here, and then just get the true values in here, okay? And you can use the template itself. See, the template I think is set up for the example in the chapter that they go through, and it's set up to do this. It's like the same problem, only you're looking over a bunch of years at quarters rather than a bunch of weeks and days. Okay, so you're trying to find a seasonality in a week. You know, does it go start low on Monday, go up Tuesday? Is there some kind of pattern there that always sets up every week for the most part? Okay, all right. So I punched into this like copycat kind of stuff. Now if you rearrange, if you go back, get those templates that I provided, right? As I said, like the question itself would have requested you to go find them. Like in the chapter, it tells you go here and go get them some templates. I did all of that ahead of time. I numbered them so per question you can go by it. So like this page that I'm showing right now. So I think we're on A3, and what I'd had in there before I actually put the screenshots was this is the name of the template is 3 template. Okay, so for A3, use the thing named A template, or 3 template rather, right? Okay, and what it is, it says averaging with seasonality template, and look at the title inside that file, template for averaging forecasting methods with seasonality. Okay, so I've created a one-to-one map of everything for you now. Okay, so the principle of it comes from maybe getting into the chapter and understanding, you know, what you're subtracting here. What's the difference? A lot of this is differences in averaging the right things. Okay, so that's the only, it's nothing too tricky there. So this is A4, this is question A4, there's the template for that. There should be an A5, there's a template for that, okay? And then the templates change, okay? So now we get to the problem B. So now you've got real data, okay? So you have true value, actual forecast, and you can figure out the forecast error, okay? So now part B, you're just going through, and I don't mean to say just as, you know, to diminish whatever it is that we have to figure out here, but you now have the templates here. You have all the templates, and you have what to do with them, okay? So if you come up with these numbers, I'm perfectly happy with this right now, because you're going to start understanding this. You know, there's a lot of learning still in this. If you can just get at that level with it, you know, if you can open up these things, and you're going to have to modify it to see what you see here on the screen, all right? And here's B.2, and they come up with the mean absolute deviation here, okay? Again, if you had operations with me, when they say absolute, and they're talking about deviation, this is like the primitives to statistics, okay? They're taking the absolute value, otherwise they get a 0 on the average, okay? But I won't confuse anybody there. So B3, you use the 8 template, and it should have something like this name in here. I noticed there was just a little slight difference between the book and the actual templates. Like there had been some one or the other had been updated a little bit, so the name might be just not perfect. But you use the 8 template file for this one, okay? And then you go to 4, and you use the 9 template, you know. And so this is exponential smoothing, okay? Exponential smoothing. What does that mean? Okay, that's a big concept about, or is a big word around something that's fairly, let's say, obvious. So this I'll give to you. Okay, this I will share with you a little bit of the scaffolding for what exponential is. So exponential doesn't take just one other period into mind. I don't have my drawing pad here, so I have to explain it with words. Okay, exponential means you might look at, let's say we're looking at weeks, and we want to know how to forecast next week, and we have this week's actuals. Okay, so the forecast next, the next period, we would just weight the previous period heavier than the next previous. So you're going to go to, so if you're forecasting for next period, you would go to the current period and put a weight factor on it. Like the forecast of the next period is going to be 60% of whatever we had this week, 20% of whatever we had last week, and 10% of whatever we had the week before. Okay, so it's not a perfect running average, where it's a weighted running average is what it really is. You're not going to weight them equally. You're going to weight one or more of them differently. Okay, and in general, you tend to weight the previous period heavily. Okay, so because the change for the next period isn't likely to vary really a whole lot if there's no, let's ignore seasonality and trends and things like that, okay? But any period's sales or whatever we're looking at, usually the best predictor is the previous period. Okay. All right. So that is what exponential is about. Exponential smoothing takes a number of periods involved, and they're not equally weighted. They're just one's more than the other. Okay. That's generally what exponential means. Okay. It might make more sense if you read that part of the book. Okay. And then we go to C, the linear regression model here. What is linear regression? It takes two random variables. In Excel, you can plot the two random variables, okay? So what you have in an XY axis, and you have one random variable along the X, one random variable going north-south on the Y axis. And what you do is you plot all the pairs of points. For every reading, for every period, think about it this way, for every period, you can have these two different readings, X and Y, whatever they're measuring. And you're just going to plot that, whatever the X value is along the X and whatever the Y is on Y, you get this plot going. You have this plot. The linear regression, I think in this case, if I'm not mistaken, all right, so linear regression at all, once you plot all your points, 50, 100, 1,000 points on there, okay, and you just visually look at it, if there is some correlation, it's either going to be positive or negatively correlated. Okay, if when X increases, if Y increases, then as a sort of a generality of what you're looking at, you're going to see a cluster, like a narrow pencil of points on your page that start in the lower left corner and they go up to the right corner. So it's like a slope. The slope is going from the lower left to the upper right. Okay, that means it's positively correlated. That means as X increases, Y increases. All right. And how tight the cluster is, like a pencil or even a line, is how correlated it can be. And the highest correlation you can get is 1, okay, the way that the math works out. So that if you have like perfect correlation, if you plotted one variable against itself, you're going to get a correlation of 1, okay, because it's going to rise and fall exactly as itself, okay. So you have like the straight line that goes right up as positive correlation. And that's what we're doing in regression, all right? In regression, the regression tends to look at trends, okay? Is there some kind of underlying trend? Because we've talked about seasonality, and regression tends to find a trend that's going on. And we're looking for linear. If you notice the name here, there's other regressions that are nonlinear, okay? So, but if you were to look at data, at your two variables, and you plot them on this, what they call the scatter diagram, okay? So it's a scatter diagram. If you look at that and it goes from the lower left to the upper right, that means as X increases, Y increases. The other end of the spectrum of correlation is if they're perfectly negatively correlated with each other. And there, think about it now, starting in the upper left-hand corner, it comes down to the lower right-hand corner. And so if you overlaid those two different scenarios, you'd have an X on the page, okay? So that means that if X rises, Y decreases. That's what negative correlation means. And in your linear regression, that's the slope, okay? What is the slope of that line, all right? Now, in the middle of that, in the middle of it being -1, where it's perfectly negatively correlated, to +1, where it's perfectly positively correlated, if there's just a fog of points, your eye can pick that up, okay? So when your eye picks it up, you go, boy, this is just like a big fog. They're not going to be probably correlated. The correlation is going to be near 0, okay? So if it's like a total randomness, and you have all these points plotted, it's going to be this cloud, and that's 0. That's right in the middle, okay? So they give you an idea of what's going on. Linear regression is like correlation. The numbers will be different, but it's similar to that in that it does a best fit through the data, and you end up with an equation. That's the difference with linear regression. You end up with an equation. Y is equal to some y-intercept plus a factor times X, okay, all right. So that's what this linear regression section about this is. And if you get the numbers right that I'm showing you, I mean, I'm giving you the numbers. You don't have to think about this. If you can set up your page like this, it will punch out the numbers on the right. The orange sections are all in the template. They're already pre-recorded or They're pre-loaded with the formula. That's the whole concept of this book. This is why I like the book. They don't go into the derivation of where all the math comes from. They go get the idea here by running it a lot. Okay, so run with the numbers a little bit and get the feel of how these things work. Okay, so as I said today, when I noticed people struggling, that's why I've just said it's totally fine if you can get this. I was getting a sense that it was an overload, and we didn't have the scaffolding. And in so many words, that's what you were telling me before. Is that, gee, where did all this come from? Okay, but all right, okay, so that's C1. Okay, so they run a linear regression in C1. In 2, again, the template's given to you, 10 template. Okay. And I gave a hint here, something about there's an estimator section of the linear regression spreadsheet. If you can come up with this, I'm not sure, is this the one? I don't know if there's yeah, anyway, I'm not sure if there's a problem with that. But anyway, the 10 template, if you open up the 10 template, it should give you this, okay? And so you're going to get familiarity with this tool set that was underneath all the chapters. Is there were files like templates like this with all the chapters, but this is where we're actually using them. Okay, so then we come down to C3. Okay, this you may have to just type in, okay, because I couldn't. In a way, I've just given you this part of an Excel file here, okay. And because I did not find the template that they were referring to, it says causal forecasting. So there's a little section in the chapter talked about causal forecasting. Okay. All right. Let's take a quick, I'm just going to take a quick look at a couple of these other things here. Let's go up here. It's that. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. I'm gonna give you a power share here. Everybody ready for the edge? Okay. I'm gonna give you the edge right now. I just had to verify what I'd seen. This is what you're after. Okay, so you're looking, how do you decide in your recommendations? Okay, I'm going to go to this question 2. I'm going to question 2. I know it can be a little bit, or I'm really sorry because they do things opposite how I think of them. Question B. Okay, so question B, if you remember, there's 5, repeating the 5 parts in here. Okay, if you go to section B, it's go back and do those other 5, use these templates, and you're going to look at, this is where we end up with MAD. So we don't have MAD yet. We don't have any MADs up here. Do we have one? Yeah, I guess they do have one up there. All right. Okay, so what you want to look at is, now that we're comparing it of actual, see, even use words that are a little bit off. This should be like actual value and forecast value, but they call it forecast actual, and they call their real ones that they recorded were true. Okay, that's just their nomenclature here. As we work down this list of B, okay, so we're question B now, right? And we were looking at what the errors were with all these prediction modes. Look at the MAD. MAD is 410.6, okay? We're doing these for a reason. That's the deviation using that forecasting technique. That's the error, so to speak, that's the error we ended up with, okay? I'll try to get page down a little bit here. Okay, so I go to the next one, and MAD is 344. So which one of these would you use going by those numbers? That's 410, and this was 344. Well, you're going to go with the lesser deviation. Okay, so far, B2 tells us if we use that forecasting technique, then the mean absolute deviation is 344. Let's look at the next one. Oh, what, it's 226.8. We're getting better. So at this point, if you had to make a recommendation, you would be on a moving average. Okay, so that's moving average, beats plain old out averaging, and last value. This is the point of this whole case, okay? So we're looking at how, by using these more sophisticated, as we go down the page here, the moving average gives us a 226, and the exponential gives us a 266. So that went off the rails a little bit. That went up again. So we would still pick our moving average, okay? And then is there a 5 in there? Why isn't there a 5? Okay. All right. So in C, so C gets beyond those and gets into this linear regression. We talked about this a little bit more linear regression there. It separates that out as a thing, okay? And then we have this. This is the chart of I believe this is for causal, okay? Yeah, causal. Right here, named in the file, this is causal, okay? Look at MAD for causal. Way down, our deviation is only 44, okay? All of that brings us down to question 4. And what I tried to do, this is the revised version, I just tried to put a little confidence builder in here, is simply answer which is the best technique for the cutting edge of the business. Which technique has the least error, okay? They call it MAD, right? How's that? Anybody feel better about this now?
I do not.
Who's that? I don't know who's speaking.
Oh, it's Hannah.
All right. You do not feel better?
I don't. I'm still a little confused on what we need to write for even just like the the written part of it, I guess.
I agree with
Okay.
Hannah. I'm not
All
sure
right.
what we need to do for the writing component
Yeah.
of this, because we didn't obviously, like, during this class we didn't do any writing, so I'm not quite sure what.
Okay. All right. That's a good thing, because that's sort of like a whole other aspect of this. And so at this point, what I would do is what you want to do is just a little bit of a description when you run this. Refer to the chapter work and just refer to like a comment or two on each of these things that you just discovered, like idiosyncrasies of running this.
So it doesn't need to be like long paragraphs. It just like
no. Let's take that out of there. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
If you all can pull this thing together like this.
So you basically just want like kind of the screenshots of what we have in a final report with like a few comments here and there, and then the executive summary. Like, is there a requirement how long it needs to be, or just like,
well,
what does that have to include?
Okay, so the idea, the other thing you need to turn in though is when you unzip, or if you have already zipped the files, the 10 files, you just have to create one file in the order that you see them in your report. Okay, all right. I want to see the work. Okay, you have to do the work.
So you want the Excel submission?
Yes, and that would be all of should be around 10 tabs in there.
Okay.
So you're going to rebuild these things that you have screenshots for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We put them in as screenshots?
You will in your report, but then you're going to also submit the Excel file you took the screenshots from.
Okay.
All right. So I think you get the mechanical part of this down now. You've got the files. You can see where you need to go with them, but so you need to put at least a couple sentences in each of these sections, probably like 3, revealing what's going on in there. Okay, so you have these screenshots, but you talk about them as exhibits, right? And you'll say, when we did it this way, you can mention some specifics, or idiosyncrasies for that particular technique. Okay, you can make observations, and you can make observations like, oh yeah, compared to what we just did in the previous section, it seems to be getting better, or for whatever reason.
I'm still confused as to what we need to put in for the executive summary. Can you just touch upon that?
Yeah, it's answer this. When you look at the actual question, let me go over to the page. Hold on. You come over here, answer this question as the executive summary. Which forecasting method would you recommend Mark use and why? As the call center contingent, how would you recommend improving the forecasting procedure? That should just be your executive summary.
And then will that also be like referred to in the conclusion as well?
Yeah, the conclusion, as I said, maybe 3 or 4 sentences for that. What I like to see, what's very common in business writing is saying lessons learned as a group, see, you've been requested to provide this report, so you could say, as you go along here and you're learning things, you just want to hold on to those and putting them into your conclusion as lessons learned. And the other thing is, they already have here this other sentence: as the call center continues its operation, how would you recommend improving the forecasting procedure? That would be, in the conclusion, that would be lessons learned. So the comments that you put into each of your sections when you run these spreadsheets, right, they're the basis of what's going to also contribute into your executive summary. The executive summary can give a little bit of a gap of how you get to your recommendation, all right? If you flip it around and say, someone handed you this document, what would you like to read in the executive summary that gives you an oversight about, you basically want to hear that the author, what do you call it? Not corroborated, but substantiated, that you substantiated your points. We can say, through this, we ran numbers that we were given by Mark, and we found that the mean average deviation for each of these techniques. You name each technique. You just go, it was this. It got better and better and better. Then it went backwards. Then it wasn't so good anymore when we did the exponential. I'm sorry, the linear regression. All right, and then when we get to the causal, that was slammed at home and said that certainly looks like the best way to do it. But there are caveats. I mean, after you get all this work done, it's better to brush up on the chapter a little bit, because I think it does point out some caveats. You don't want to over, there's always, nothing's perfect, right? So if there's some things about causal that should be concerned about in that technique, the book, I think, talks about some things that you'd be concerned about. Its weaknesses, in other words, right? You have to be careful that forecasting doesn't bite you. And so each one of these has a little bit of an issue. Like, what happens if there's, per what they're talking about here, the seasonality, so there's 2 points that they were talking about heavily in here. One of them was seasonality, and the other point was the centralized versus the decentralized. The thing that they went to the centralized model on this, so you might want to include a little bit about centralized model on it. It was what did we lose, what did we win by doing that? Why things might have changed. So at this point, I think you're going to get experience by taking the Excel files, making them work as you see that I've given you in that file, right? Make them work, and then take a 3-mile out look at what just happened here. That's more how we're handling this, right? That's how we're going to get, so to speak, the scaffolding here, is just work through those spreadsheets. How's that?
Good. I mean, still a little bit confused, but it's better than what it was before.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be fairly available. Maybe I'll check out here if you have specific questions as you're working through this thing. I'll be available tonight. Tomorrow I have to actually travel a little bit. I'll take a look in the morning at around noon or 1 o'clock, and then later at night I'll just see how everybody's doing. If there's anything that you what I want to do is remove roadblocks if you just absolutely can't get it. I'd rather have learn this than have a roadblock and just what are you going to take out of that, right?
Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day and doing this. Really appreciate it.
Good. I appreciate you. I'm glad you were all working together. I got the feeling that you had been talking, and that's fine. It's fine with this. It does have to do a little bit with, the online aspect of this, and then having to, when you have an online course, things have to be so prepared in advance that we're kind of working through not having that all in play. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't steered anybody wrong. Some questions came in. I was like, wow, maybe something really fell apart here. And each time my heart rate would come back down when I went back in there, because basically the framework works. But use a chapter reading too. Like if you have a question, what's going on while you're doing this, go back in the chapter. In their case, they're doing it. All right, they do it too. Well, and in fact, you can understand how to map these templates, because the data in the templates come from what's in the chapter. If you look in the templates, all that data is what they show you in the chapter. And that, what I did was just pull them all out, put them in order, so you didn't have to think about, I don't know what, I think that would have been even worse if you had to figure out what template to use and where to go with that. All right. So as I said,
thank you again. So I guess I'm going to start this and see where it goes.
All right. Okay. I'll be checking in on seeing how you're doing with it. thanks for working along too. I mean, I'm thankful for that too. So I want you to get the most out of this. All right.
Definitely, definitely. All right. Well, thank you again, and well, I guess you'll see how this turns out tomorrow.
Okay. Very good. Good. Let me know if you have any roadblocks. All right.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
Well, thanks. I rather would have rather met everybody in classroom. Anybody that's had me knows that I really enjoyed the time in the classroom. But hang in there. And as I said, if you get something, let me know. I'll try to help you through it.
Perfect. Just remember how sweet we are when you grade us.
I do. You are great. I've been actually really enjoying it. I've gotten to know you. The people that I hadn't had before, I've got to know a little bit too. So it's all good.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Professor?
Yes.
I was just about to write back to you. It's Erica. If possible, I'll respond to your email. The last one, that about the final.
Oh, the final exam?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see anything late from you, but
No,
yeah.
no, I didn't write back yet. I was kind of
Okay.
focusing on rereading the chapters so that I can
All right.
figure out the paper.
The parts that we're talking about, don't overthink it.
Yeah, that's my problem. I'm
Yeah,
overthinking it.
Look at chapter 9. That was in chapter 9.
Yeah.
And yeah, just look at the examples and look at the questions. Yeah. Send me an email. Let me know. Just respond to what I said to you. Okay.
Yes, I
All
will.
right.
I'm gonna do it right
All
now.
right. Very good.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too.